y me llama el cocinero. Check, 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 check.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for coming. I thought about like how can I bring you out of the food coma, if you know what it is, like after lunch you are getting tired. And I squeezed some video in which I did a couple of weeks ago to summarize the last 5 years in IT industry. I'm still not sure if it's a good idea, but anyway, we have to figure this out and I give it a try. Perhaps you have seen this guy before, but in that environment.
Y me llama el cocinero. Risita, ¿qué? Ve por la paellera. Venga, que las 2 de la tarde ya están aquí. Mira el bañador, en la chancla. Todo despeinado porque no me dio tiempo nada ponerme la chancla y el bañador. Voy a la playa, había subido la marea. Había subido la marea y encontré una paella. chipiones de faro. Y cuando entro en el restaurante me ve el cocinero con una paellera y adentro la 20 paelleras. ¡Asómate, mira dónde llega el agua! Llegaba el agua hasta el restaurante. Había subido la marea. Jesús, hay que hacer ahora con los dos sacos de arroz. ¡Llama para Sevilla! ¡Llama a Sevilla! ¡Que traigo Jesús, yo con el bañador y con la paella. El cocinero. No veas, a Sevilla. Y al último que cuando ya salió la bien de regla, estamos llorando. Me cobró el tío la... Me cobró a 500 metros y ya no fui más.
That's it. I hope you are awake now. It's free, you can download it. I've done it myself. Means not the laughing, but the text. It's out there on Twitter. Okay, so now I'm going to start with a retalk, how convenience is killing open standards. And at the beginning, I was not sure if open standards alone is the right title, because convenience is killing a lot. The planet, open source, and open standards, but I'm trying to focus on open standards right now. Giving you a little bit of an idea who I am and what we are doing. So my name is Bernd. I'm working as a CEO of a German professional service company named Netways, and I'm also CEO of a monitoring company named Rethink. Perhaps somebody of you has heard of it. I gave some talks on it a couple of years ago here at Rootconf. I'm also heavily involved in the DevOps Days movement from the Global Core Organizer Group, which helps organizing DevOps Days all over the world. And I live in Nuremberg, Germany. Nuremberg is in the north of Bavaria, if that sounds familiar. And you can find me on Twitter using gethash if you want to. So where I'm coming from, and I think it's one of the reasons why I came up with the talk. So I started my career as a Solaris admin when it was in the end of the 90s. I was like 18, 19 years old at the time. I worked at a German reseller named Cubelet. They are bankrupt by now, so they did like pretty much what Amazon did in a very old-fashioned way. At some point, I came into the Oracle DBA business for whatever reason, and I ended up in an open source company. The company I work now, I'm there for 12 years. I think there's a very high chance that I retire there because I still love my job, I like it, and so why should I change? So I definitely don't want to leave the open source business anymore if I don't have to. So there's a high chance I leave there. So what is the motivation for the talk I have? I think one of the reasons is really that I'm old. I'm old in the way that I still feel young enough. I'm 42 now. But I see that on this topic, there's a totally different point of view if you're like 18, 19, 20 years old, or you're in the middle of if you're 20th, or if you're like 40, 45. Who of you has like started with some HPOX, AIX, Solaris stuff? Let's say the minority. Some of you, the older gentlemen. So when I was young, I was like super curious what I can do. So I started my career there. I came out from a Windows environment because of gaming at home, and then started doing the Solaris box. And the only thing they gave me was the terminal, and I was super frustrated that we had like an 18K for millions of dollars in the data center, and the only thing I see was a terminal. And then we started there, and for the host guys, we still had at the time in our company, we were like the toy computer guys. So they did COBOL and assembler, and we started to do some Unix stuff, and for them, they really didn't take us serious. But it was important for us. We would like to learn about it. We would like to do something great. But in the department I was at the time, we pretty much only had Sun Solaris and HPX in the early 2000s, so millennials, this was the kind of a modern platform people went to. We still had a little bit of IX as well, but this was kind of the Unix systems we had at the time, and we had to deal with them because that was the environment given to us. So we had big goals. So everything came new up. We started with our official like website at the time, web shop and all that stuff that was pretty cool. And what we wanted is like a great architecture. So we figured out that we need some application servers and databases and all that stuff and the glue to fix them all together. But it was really hard to get like software on that Solaris. There was some platforms like Sun Freeware, if you know that. But it was really hard to get the glue or the software which is out there on your platform. So what you did usually, you asked your company like Sun or HPX, what do you have, what tool do you have? And they, no problem, whatever problem you have, we have some software for you. It will solve it. Perhaps it's not cheap, but it will work. So you waited for a couple of weeks and they send you some box, you try to install it. Most of the time it worked pretty well, but usually we ended up that our initially planned construction zone looked like this. So we tried to put some stuff together, it never worked really out. So everything we did, it's like all the supposed improvements made it more worse. And since I guess it's happened so often in Germany that we even have a German word for that, which is Verschlimmbesserung. So if you even come to Germany, Verschlimmbesserung says in one word, we try to make it better, we made it worse. So this is one of the best words we have. So it was super frustrating because we were willing, we would like to learn, but we were kind of trapped in that login that we can only use specific software which was available in that version for that processor architecture, and it was really not fun. Thanks to God, we had a little bit of a standards, and I think like airplanes and airports are a good description for standards because it's so highly standardized. It's the foundation that we can fly from every place on the world to another because there's a standard how it works. In the Unix world at the time, there was something like the POSIX standard, which described like portable operating system interface, which described a lot of different things like the basic definitions, like the system APIs, or even some basic commands, like it described that you have an NVI or AWK on every system. So this was a requirement. And that even for us, for the Solaris folks in the team, it was possible for us to do some simple stuff on the HPX system because that POSIX standard helped us out, that we have a chance to port our stuff, even our shell or C shell scripts from one machine to another. And this was really important. And the POSIX standard itself is like from 1990. Richard Stallman, who was also very active in all that free software movement, and it brought a change. And I think that POSIX standard itself was a very important foundation because at the time more and more people had that problem that they needed some extra glue to make their system running. They didn't found it, and there was something like GNU tools at the time. So you had a chance using open source tools out there in the community and use them on your different Unix systems. So you were not more locked in the Unix system and their software anymore, so they gave us much more freedom. And at the time already, in our department, Linux started to become a thing. So these are the old Linux boxes. Linux was founded in like 20 kilometers from the city where I live. So we had these big boxes with 20 CDs to install. We had one guy in the company who started with Linux. Officially, it was not happening in the company because it was not used at all. So we were laughing at him at the beginning because he was compiling kernels for weeks and then he missed this module and this module and this module, and we from the Solaris, we behaved the same way like the host guys behaved on us. We said, yeah, with your 1,000 CDs, you never will make it happen. We ended up at the company I worked, the official website, they run on Linux. On his PC, under his desk, they bought some Solaris machine we were running in the data center. At the time, the only thing they did was like CT at home, which is like gathering data for aliens. If you still know their project, this is what the official production machines did for us. And the website was driven on Linux under the desk. And so we came into that business, and it was just great because there was a huge community, and people were so active in that and started to contribute. And it was, for me, the beginning of diversity from a technical perspective in that area because it was easy for you to work with all the different technologies, bring it over from one system to another, even you were not binded to a specific hardware. So you could use much everything and get your software from one system to another. Was really fantastic at that point. So we all our group, at some point we left the company or we started to go more into the Linux business because we just loved it. So what happened? So time flies, 20 years from now. the current status. Perhaps this is a little bit too pessimistic. But in some point, from an open standard and from an interoperability standpoint, I think we are kind of at that point. Because we are celebrating that we have like multiple clouds out there. Everything is super easy compared to the past, which is in some way true. And I think at the other point, we are more and more going to a point where we're missing and losing some freedom. Of course, passion lead us here, so we all still working on that. Microsoft loves Linux for a couple of years now, which is great. Would you tell me that 15 years ago? I would say never, but this happened. Even it happened because of pressure, because of market pressure, not because everybody is nice or bad, because the market forced them to do so. And we have more open source than ever. So we have more open source out there, usable and non-usable open source on GitHub or wherever it's out there. So a lot of stuff you can use. But on the server side, we are faced with a market who looks like that currently. So, okay, you cannot see where the data is not like, I didn't come up with the data. It's from a cloud report, which is on the slides I will share afterwards. So currently you can say, given that 31% of the public cloud, and you can say that perhaps the hybrid cloud is 10% in addition, we are perhaps 45, nobody knows exactly, 45% of the enterprise computing happens in the cloud. So this is where it is. So on-premise, and if you compare like today to next year, on-premise is losing by 10%, public cloud is gaining more attention, even hybrid cloud, of course, but I think we will see a movement that perhaps in 5 years from now, on-premise instances will be at 5% or 7%, and most of the stuff will be in a public cloud. So the question is it a problem, or is it just like it is? So where's the problem with it? One thing I said, we have more open source than ever, which is true, but open source is not open standards. So there's a differentiation. I think they play together very well. Means perhaps because of open standards, more open source exists, or because of open source, they force more people into open standards. I think they have a strong relationship, but for sure it's not the same. You can use an open standard format with a proprietary software, which is okay if you do so, but it's important to see that. And what an open standard is, so we have like consortiums like World Wide Web or the Internet Engineering Task Force who are responsible for open standards. Another thing which is important, and I have that often if I talk to the younger people, that having an API is not a standard. So in the last years, we kind of adopted things like, for example, S3 compatibility kind of as a standard because other products are using it. So it's kind of a de facto standard. It's not a defined one, but it's like a de facto standard. And even nowadays, I would say it's pretty hard for Amazon to change this S3 standard because all the applications rely on it will be messed up. My problem is that we have a very unbalanced market. And since my first picture version of this with Solaris and HPX was not true, I did it on my own, this is a real picture of Seattle Airport. So you go there, check in for your flight, and if you're not working for these guys, you have to go to another line and wait a little bit longer, which is perhaps okay if you have time, or perhaps you have business class and you don't care because you have more money. But it's like in some way, I don't like the idea, honestly. Because it's, and perhaps you cannot read it fully, it's an unbalanced market, right? So how does it look like? The major players in that business are AWS, Azure. And there is Google Cloud coming, and there are all the others, which I think in the future they will be there, but I don't think that they will be so relevant. So these are the top three fighting for the market. Azure has the biggest growth rate, especially in the small, medium business part. And it looks like, I don't know if the statistic is true, even it's like mentioned down there, it's a right scale state of the cloud report, that AWS for the first time will lose a little bit next year because of Azure is going so strong. I don't know if that really happens, but what I can say now, we have like 2 or 3 big players in that market which control the market. But we have no standards. There are no real standards in the cloud. There's stuff like open virtualization format, or there's like open cloud computing interface. Somebody ever heard of OCCI? So you can see how popular it is. So because it is an official standard, there are like cloud softwares like OpenEbola, which is also unfortunately not very popular. They implemented that standard where you can play and manage your cloud resources the same way on all the multiple systems, seeing as an open cloud. And since there are no open standards, I think this is one of the reasons why tools like Terraform are so popular. So who of you is using Terraform? A lot of you. So it's great software. But what it does at the end, it solves the problem to you that there is no common open standard, and it reflects that to you. Even if you work with Terraform, you know that like configuring machines on Azure, Google Cloud Platform, and AWS is not exactly the same to you. So you have to adjust. But it's kind of a layer and gives you kind of a management abstraction to the cloud platforms. And Terraform is #1 growing config management on the market right now. Because of that, it means these companies is hiring like crazy. They're doing an amazing job with all the other tools they have. But the reason is because people at some way missing that fact that they don't have an open standard to work with their clouds. And Terraform is in a lucky market position that they right now have people at the cloud providers working for them and making sure that the plugins work. So Terraform is people paid on the Oracle payroll who implement their stuff, that Terraform works well with their software. But for me, this is not what an open standard is. It's just like, it takes away the pain that there is no open standard, but this is not what I want. And what is the impact on open source then? So even if I said before open source is not an open standard and it's not the same, I think this is a strong relationship. And the important thing, so we're doing open source on our own. Perhaps this is also because it bores me or it's one of my topics. Every open source company, at some point they need to make money because the major open source out there is driven by companies. Of course, there are individuals out there. They start with open source, they put it on GitHub and all that stuff. There are a lot of people spending their free time on open source software. But the majority of open source development happens in companies. So it's like people on companies' payroll contribute to the Linux kernel. It's not like the folks at home in front of their TV doing some stuff. They are these folks, but the majority is paid. So what it means, like these companies need to make money. And so imagine from an open source perspective is that you have open source in whatever model you can have it. It's like fully free, you have like a dual license, you have some enterprise module, which is the typical open source way of making business, that your foundation is open source, but some like special features, usually it's something like Active Directory or all that stuff, something the enterprises needs, which is something you have to give money for, like the XPack for Elastic, for example, which is pretty much the model they use to make some money and revenue. And I think it's okay, because at the end, they have to pay their people.
Hello.
up in creating new open source licenses because we still have enough open source licenses. Honestly, I think there are 10 people on the planet who really figure it out what all this open source licensing, how it works. Because it's really, if you go deeper, it's really complicated. What you can do, what you cannot do, if you have to write the packages and all that stuff. So it even gets more complicated because all that companies feel pressure that they have a revenue model in 5 years ago. So we come up with all the new licenses. Still, I don't know. I can understand it. On one hand, I'm not sure on the other hand if it's a good solution that everybody comes up with a new license to protect their stuff. At the end, open source and open standard, they need support. So sometimes there was open source which ended up to be a standard, sometimes vice versa. I also get that like defining open standards is one problem. It takes a lot of time. And today is like everything about speed, speed, speed. If you're not the first, you're done. So it's all about speed. So nobody in that environment we have now is like, oh, wait, we have to create and meet up in the consortium to define a state how like function as a service could work and how we can make sure that interoperability can work in the future. So it takes too long. So everybody's like on his road. But somebody needs to pay people to do their stuff and do their work and bring innovations on the market. If you want innovation outside the public cloud. So if you want that, you have to make sure, and we as a society, as a community, have to make sure that at some point somebody's helping them to pay the people. So where's potentially the future? And the black and white should not look so pessimistic, so please focus more on the hand, because I still hope on the good things. So where are we now? We are still at the beginning at some point. Yeah? We have infrastructure as a service for years now, which is the different tools give you good ways to bring your software stack from one platform to another. So platform as a service, all that function as a service, serverless movement is pretty new, means there are a lot of well-used components like Lambda, but there's more and more coming up for working with images and messaging and all that stuff. And I get it. It has some value because it's just work. It's just convenient. You can just use it. So the question is, if we are here, is it only getting worse from now? I hope you have all seen Game of Thrones. Did you like it, the last episode? It was no yes, okay? I get it. Well, you can discuss it, but perhaps afterwards. So, well, no, I don't think so. So there is something we can do and perhaps we should do. So one thing, I think we have to be clear that convenience is a risk. Means I have one of these phones too, which is exactly the thing I have told you. Because I have it because it's convenient. I played around with Android once. I was not happy about it. Don't kill me afterwards. I know there's like fans in both areas. For me, it just works and I moved in. And I know at some point, if it sucks me so much that I have to leave that platform, that all the money I invested in their apps is gone. It's like perhaps over years, $200, I don't know, $500 for my son. But this will be gone. This is my investment, this risk I take going to that vendor login I have here. Because it's convenient, it just works. But also login is a risk. And as a company, I think you have to make that clear to yourself. So if you put your platform on whatever provider out there without a chance to bring it somewhere else, you have to decide at some point, I am willing to take that risk. And I think it's okay if you do it. It's absolutely okay if you say, okay, we want to be fast, because slowness is a risk too. To be slow, because then you have a great idea and you think, okay, we buy our own data center stuff, and when we start our own Kubernetes and we need 20 people for it and we need all the deploy pipeline all on our own. But then you figure out now our hardware is ready, somebody else came up with the idea and kicked you out of the market. So it's a risk too, but I think it's important that you keep that in mind. Just not at the beginning. So if I would have a great idea, unfortunately I don't have a great idea now, I would do it. And I probably will start with some cloud offering because it would be just super convenient, it would be easy. I, at the beginning, only pay for what I use, so I totally get it. But at some point, and I think everybody has gone through it, if you are successful with your company, with your platform, you have to re-engineer it at some point. Because every developer knows that feeling. You look back after a year and you're asking yourself, what I have done in this night, because it's crap. At the time, you thought it was just brilliant. So every company goes through it, tries and have to re-engineer their stuff. And I think if you are successful and your revenue stream works, perhaps that's a point to rethink. Is it only 100% smart to rely on somebody who has total control about it? And means company worry about it. Also from the right scale state is like priority number one in every enterprise company is optimization of cloud costs. Because at some point, they don't figure out why this build is so expensive. Because people use the resources, it's so super simple, but then they don't know what's running there. So they are, I think, minimum 20 companies on the market, and I guess perhaps in reality it's 200 who offer that service cloud cost optimization for you. So you pay somebody else to reduce your bill. Yeah, well, you can do that, but isn't it a little bit weird? And so if you ask somebody and say, hey, what about pricing? Are you not curious about, like, if they have the market? And they say, no, it's not a problem at all. They reduced the prices for the last 7 years, every year. No problem, that will never happen. But think about pricing in an oligopolistic situation where only 2 or 3 players control the market, which, and I give you an example, happens with insulin in the United States. So insulin was discovered in, I guess, 1921, and they sold the patent to the University of Toronto to make it available to everyone, that everybody who has that health problem has easy access to insulin. So what's now is, in 2006, 1 dose of insulin, and most of the people need like 2 a month or some, depending on how much you are into it, costs $67. Today it costs $285, because only 3 companies in the US control that market on insulin. So nobody is able to, why should they reduce the pricing? And especially in the United States, there's no law against like increasing the pricing all the time. So people die, people get bankrupt, and because they cannot afford the insulin. Okay, perhaps you will say you cannot compare like public cloud to insulin, but I showed you that I can. Abuse of power comes no surprise, and this is something where I'm a little bit afraid of. It's not that I cannot sleep at night, but I'm worried that so many people are not worried about. This is the thing which my message should be for you, hopefully. That even if you disagree with like 80% of my stuff I told you today, you say at one point perhaps he is right a little bit, and we should think about it. So what can you do? Hard question. So be reasonable. Think about it. Think about it, what you're doing, at what stage of your life cycle perhaps you can change your behavior. Put more pressure on your company you buy your cloud services from. So take care that interoperability is important. So make sure you have that, and make sure you have a chance to go from one system to another, to have that flexibility, because it's important in open standards and accepted standards. And I would be happy even if we have some open cloud standards, even if they are not like created or confirmed by some consortium, even if all the big ones would agree, because then it's also a chance for other companies to enter that market, right? If we don't have an open standard on function as a service, serviceless computing, and you came up with the idea, I would like to start a managed service company, how should you? There's no chance for you to participate in that market because the fact that there is no standard is really hard for you. And the only thing is you can do is you can try to be the same and provide the same service. But yesterday evening we had like a discussion on open standard, and some guy said like he worked for Eucalyptus at the time. And Eucalyptus, somebody perhaps heard of you, was an open source project at the time. They tried to be kind of on-premise Amazon alternative. And what they tried all the time is like trying to be AWS compatible and having the same APIs like Amazon provides to you. But it was impossible because Amazon changed the APIs all the time. And since there's no standard, they were not able to keep up. And I don't think, but I guess Eucalyptus is not existing anymore. So it was close to impossible for them to participate in a market, provide perhaps an on-premise alternative that you as a developer, you as an engineer can work with AWS in the public cloud, which is fine. But also you can play with a compatible layer in your data center or at somebody else or in a local data center, or you would like to support a local company. Means now, they told us the last 5 years we should bring everything to the cloud. Now everybody's coming up with other products. Now we have edge computing. AWS announced something like Outcast, where they ship the EC2 server to your on-premise situation. HP, I think a couple of weeks ago, announced something like Cloudless. I watched the video like 20 times. I still don't get it, what they would like to say. But perhaps try it another 10 times. Perhaps I get it then. So really, please make sure that this is an importance for you. So support the variety. So please make sure that there is more out there, that we have all that, we have different tools, we have different providers we can use, that we have that flexibility. Demand contribution. I think, and I don't know enough because there's so many things are going on. I think Google is doing it in a way better way now with like partnering with open source companies, providing that cloud service because I get it that people want that convenience and would like to use that tool. That's it. That's okay. And that's okay that they give money back. But demand it. If you're big enough, you have like a key account manager. Demand that your provider is behaving perhaps in a better way to the others, and that we don't end up with like having only 3 and 5 years. So perhaps doubt sometimes. There's like a Confluence, what is it named? Cognitive fluency, if you have ever heard about it. So our brain is something like, if something sounds really good to us, we are halfway in. It's super hard for us to make an active decision against, which is a typical thing. One example is if you search for something at Google to support your own opinion, because you would like to go for Kubernetes, what you would like to find as a result in Google is only something which supports your already made opinion. So always have to search for the other things. You have to search for what did not work to create and go against the natural way your brain is like moving you. I gave another talk about that. You can find it somewhere. It's really interesting. Diversity is up to you, to us, because we as an industry invest a lot of time in having like a people diversity, bringing everyone on board and making it inclusive and all the things. But I think, and this is super important, but I also think it's important for us that we have a diversity in tech as well. And we have to demand it, we have to work together on it, and that's pretty much everything I have to say about it. Thank you very much for listening. Hope you enjoyed it a little bit. Do we have time for questions? 5? Okay, if there are any.
Yeah, hi. So you described the problem really well, right? That, but how do I sell it to, an upper management who's worried about cost? Because to them, paying $5 a month for some proprietary service trumps everything else. So how do you propose to sell this?
It's a very good question. I don't know. How you can sell that to your management that probably think about an alternative is hard. I think one thing is there are thousands of examples out there that using a cloud service is not only about saving money. It's super fast, and that part of being fast gives you power, and that it's perhaps cheap at the beginning. But first of all, and please correct me if you think about it differently, it's super hard to really figure out what my costs will be in 3 weeks, because you technically don't know, because there's like you have to pay for this package going from A to B and that disk and this one. So it's super hard. And means there are also examples for companies who are successful, they try to get out of the cloud again, because they reach the limit of consumption. I think a good example is, as far as I know, is Datadog, for example. They are the biggest S3 customer currently. And they moving forward are now bringing everything to Kubernetes and going off the cloud because it's so expensive. I think Dropbox did it, and there are others of examples company did it. For whatever reasons, I don't know. But I think there's a lot of pros for public cloud. My point is just there's also con for public cloud. And I just want that people think about it. But I don't have like the simple words for your boss to say, hey, we should think about it. Perhaps my slides could help. Perhaps. Any other question?
Okay, so how I see this is, this is an evolution. So if you see the olden days, there was a proprietary software.
Yeah.
Open source ate the proprietary world.
Yeah.
Cloud ate open source. And now multi-cloud is eating single cloud, right? So the tools like Terraform and all, let's say, is killing the cloud thing, if you see it today, right? So this is just an evolution, how I see it. And like there are ways, let's say Redis Labs is doing great job because Redis Labs is like protecting their license and extra features, modules and all, how they protect, like the AWS can't copy it, right? So I see this is a way to, protect them.
You are right. It's just an evolution. Honestly, first of all, I don't think that every evolution is great. Means it brought us as humanity in a lot of problems, evolution. The other thing is, and I'm trying to be very clear about it, I don't like the idea that we have a future and see it very negative, okay? In 10 years, that 95% of the internet is controlled by 3 companies controlled by 1 government. I don't like the idea. And I can tell you now why, but I don't like it. It freaks me out. It means the internet should be more, it should be decentralized. We should like open standards because then everybody can participate. But if you like going in there with flags and say, yeah, we will be in there, and nobody knows what happens. And I don't know, I have the feeling that it's, I don't know, not freaking out enough people to think about it. It's not about running the application, or it's not about that you cannot like migrate your application from whatever provider to another one. It's like if they have 90% of everything, they control traffic. They control how much you get, how much traffic you get, how much I/O you get because somebody else is paying 20 times as more than you. And then imagine you are staying on an interstate where somebody's passing you all the time and you're waiting for the green signal, but you don't get it because others have more control. And that is something I don't like the idea. And even though I don't have like 20 arguments to bring it on today. But I'm afraid of this like oligopolistic situation. I repeat it. I repeat the question. If I get it right, he said like Terraform is supporting you going multi-cloud. That's correct. And that's, I think what I mentioned is why Terraform is so powerful and successful. But if you go on serverless and function as a service, I don't use the word I have in mind now. You are trapped.
Hey.
Hi.
Up here.
Should we? Okay.
Am I off? Okay. Great talk. I totally agree with you. I can relate to everything that you've said. Other than the fact that there is a lot of vendor lock-in for convenience, there is another problem that you presented, which there is no standards. Now, I think part of the solution to that problem is not even there. There is no standards for defining standards, or do you think there are any? So there's Open API for APIs, but when you look at standards like the S3 standard, I mean, it evolved to be a standard.
Exactly.
It wasn't standard on its own, or there is no there's nothing like W3C or IETF which can govern standards on its own. So I think one part of that problem is defining how we define standards, or is there something of that sort?
It's absolutely a good point. I think at some slide I mentioned that we have like this consortium stuff, and the problem is one is like defining standards takes a long time. And this is like slowing down everybody in that business because it's like, again, being the first is very important. And I think we have to come up with better ideas how we can create open standards and how, like also the big players play together and giving you a chance to take the system from A to B. I don't have an answer for that. I think like the old ways where we discussed it for years, how something should be like, does not work anymore. We have to find a new way of collaboration and force our suppliers, our vendors to do so. But yeah, correct, it's a very good question. I don't have a good answer for it. Perhaps we can chat outside a little bit. Okay, again, thank you. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard. Yeah, we definitely have a long way to go in encouraging and promoting open standards. So before we go to the flash talks, I just want to make an announcement. There's a BOF session happening on the first floor on encryption and key management.
Thank you.
So if you're interested, you can just attend that. So I request all the flash talks presenters to come forward to the first row. The first talk will be on running Cubelet as a container by Abhay Rana, also known as Nemo. Abhay Rana.
I'll go? Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm going to be speaking about running Cubelet in a container. This is going to be a Kubernetes-heavy talk. If you haven't used Kubernetes, it has a component called a kubelet, which is basically the scheduler that runs on each and every node that's part of your cluster. This is the thing that talks to your containerd or your Docker daemon to ensure that pods get scheduled correctly. The question is, how can you run Cubelet in a container? Why would you even want to do it? Currently, Cubelet runs as a binary on each and every node that you are running. Even if it's a master node or a worker node, you will have Cubelet running as a binary. But there are certain advantages to running Cubelet as a Docker container, which is you can use other management layers, such as the Docker API, to schedule your Cubelet across various nodes. Alongside that, you get the standard advantages of running Cubelet as if you can manage things using Docker Compose as your overlay layer, you get the same advantages here as well. This is what I was trying to do when I ran into this problem, running Kubernetes on top of a control plane that is set up using the Docker daemon. What this basically means is I run Terraform on my local, which spins up a Docker daemon on the host. Only using the Docker daemon and nothing else, and the Terraform Docker API, I want to spin up an etcd, a bootkube, and a kubelet. Spinning up an etcd and a bootkube is much more easier. You can just spin them up as Docker containers. Spinning up Cubelet currently is not supported. It was supported back in 2015, and then people realized this was the 2015 PR, which ended up being merged. The support was there for a while, and then people realized it broke a lot of things, and it wasn't being maintained actively, so it ended up being deprecated, and it's still being attempted. The deprecation is not yet complete because OpenShift still uses this flag, but the flag doesn't work properly anymore. It only works with certain OpenShift configurations, and it's very hard to use unless you're running OpenShift. There were other people who are also trying to do other things. CoreOS, for example, has this thing called a Cubelet Wrapper, which is basically a shell script that spins up your Cubelet by using Rocket. However, this doesn't work anymore because Rocket is no longer a maintained project. If let's say you decide you say, hey, I want to actually do this, there are lots of things that you need to look out for. The first is standard Docker flags. Kubelet wants to run as a privileged container, so you pass. These are basically Docker flags for Docker run command. So you want to say Docker run -- privilege for your kubelet. You want to give it a standard host PIDs, so it has access to all the namespaces. You want to do the same thing for network, so it has access to all the networks that the other containers will be using. Fairly easy. The second part is configuration. You need to mount lots and lots of configuration into the Docker container. So instead of these being available to the kubelet binary on the host itself, they're instead available as volume mounts. Fairly standard. You can just do -- volume, mount these across. The next problems that you'll face are around shared volume mounts, which is why the current thing is getting deprecated. So this is my attempt at doing it. This is a working example of kubelet running in a Docker container. You also need to mount a few other read-only volumes to get kubelet access to a few other things, like the /sys/dev paths. Alongside that, there are a few other things that a kubelet expects. For example, it expects you to have an etc OS release file, which gives you the OS information. The trickier part is making sure that the varlib kubelet directory is shared mount true. This is currently not supported in Terraform. You need to have a patched version of the Terraform Docker provider for this. But if you're using Docker Compose or just the Docker run command, you can just pass colon shared or r shared as part of your Docker run command. What this does is any other container that kubelet will spin up, if it requires any volume mounts, such as your secret mounts or end mounts, all of those will get mounted using this shared volume mount. So the kubelet will have equal access to that volume as your actual container that is running alongside it as well. And yeah, that's it. If you're interested in running Terraform/Docker/Kubernetes and kubelet, talk to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhay. The next talk is on SSH key management tool using AWS IAM and S3 by Roshan Kumar.
Oh, wait.
Hello? Yes. So basically, most of us like use SSH in our production environment to access our production servers, right? So, but there are a few underlying problems, like most of the company doesn't solve in one go. Like one problem is that how to manage your SS key. Like there will be multiple users coming and going, and how to keep permissions on go actually that it should immediately affect. Suppose somebody want to rotate his key, how can he do? So these are the few underlying problem. And also like suppose I'm going on a server, right? So which kind of access I have. So these are the few major problem. Like we say it like in 4 different way: authentication, authorization, and then we have something called monitoring and audit logging. So these are the 4 problems like we are trying to solve in our company. So that time I proposed this solution called Heimdall. So it has actually like 4 components I talked about. So if you go here, like one is authentication, authorization, then there is something called sudoers, and then we have like admin tools also. So what it does basically, so let me talk about the first architecture. So if you see, you can see here architecture that what happens that we have like 2 parts. One is authentication and authorization. It's running on the each of the cloud servers or physical servers you have, right? What it does, like every service, right? It try to contact to AWS and try to get all the users details, like what kind of permission he has and what is his public key. So suppose, it runs every minute and makes sure that whatever the key you have, like what kind of permission you have on the AWS IAM defined, right? It's copied it here in the servers and make sure that it creates a user and assigns similar kind of permissions there. And also, what it does when you're trying to log into the servers, so it's tied to AWS, and there you can store your keys, and it matches the key whether your key is same or not. So in this way, right? So what admin is trying to do, he's getting rid of his managing the key. Basically, he's managing his keys himself. So whenever I want, I can change my key. Only the admin is taking care of permission that I have to have this kind of permission on this particular servers. So this is like things we are trying to provide all those things using Heimdall. So as I talked about, right? So it's also a command line tool. It runs on all the machines, and it fetches keys from AWS. So AWS IAM provides a way to stores keys, and we have a logic that if a key is older than 90 days, it will automatically start rejecting, and it does validity on each login. So suppose somebody somebody's key has been expired, or somebody's key has been like private key has been exposed to somebody, right? You can enforce it here. Admin doesn't have to get involved into this. Like user can manage their credentials themselves. So we also do like, you can ask that how can anybody know that what kind of permissions a user will have on a machine, right? So we manage this thing using AWS IAM policies. So we define a different kind of policies, and in different policies is associated with different machines. So whenever suppose any authorizer is running on any machine, right? So it will figure it out in this machine which all users has to have access and which kind of access has to be there. And all the map is actually stored in the AWS IAM policy. And the policy you can attach to a user. If a user has those policy, it means that it has that kind of permission. So in this way, like we are able to manage all those things. Now coming to the provider, right? So as I told here that I have been using AWS IAM, but it's not necessary that you use AWS IAM. You can use any kind of central location. I'm using AWS IAM mainly because so any user in my company, he has to have AWS account, right? So it's easy to manage everything there itself. So yes, this is pretty much. So you can see that there is like 3 potentially things, and you can using those things, you can manage those AWS credentials pretty easy. So if you have any kind of question, you want to get like, details, like please contact me.
Thank you, Roshan Kumar. Yes. So next talk is by Rahul Bajaj on Foreman Discover Metal as a Service.
Hello everyone. So my name is Rahul Bajaj, and I will talk about Metal as Service. So how many of us have heard about this concept called Metal as Service? Raise your hands. Anyone? Metal as Service. Great. So I'll quickly go through what is Metal as Service. There's a very important terminology that is Pixie-based provisioning, which I will introduce you to, and then we will look at what is Foreman discovery. So quickly talking about Metal as Service. So setting up, say for example, you have a new startup that you tend to open, and then you have like 50 machines coming in. Now managing those bare metals one by one by a human being is difficult. It is error prone. So what you do, you use something called as Metal as Service. What you do is you use a cluster of metal, or you use a cluster of machines someplace somewhere outside your data center. And then you use them as you use cloud, but it is a cluster of metal that you're using and not cloud. So that was a short description of how you can describe metal as a service, but we'll go into detail for better understanding. So one thing that you would require is Pixie-based provisioning. So we'll understand what Pixie is before we get into the Foreman discovery. So what happens is, for Pixie-based discovery, for Pixie-based provisioning, you need 2 things. One thing that you need is a DHCP server, and second thing is a TFTP server. When you start with a Pixie provisioning, the first step is that the host sends a request to the DHCP server, asking it for an IP address and a next server's address. So when a request is done from the host to a DHCP server, it will return back with an IP address, a gateway, and the next server's address. Now this next server's address is basically your TFTP server's address. Now once your host will reach to the TFTP server, it will ask for a file which will also be sent by the DHCP server. So if you see the image on the screen, you'll see there is an IP address that is sent, there is a gateway, there is a next server address, that is your TFTP server, and this is the file name that needs to be fetched from the TFTP server. Second step is your host will connect to the TFTP server, and once it connects to the TFTP server, it will ask for the file name that was provided by our DHCP server. So it gets the file name, it gets the pixielinux.0 file. Once it gets the pixielinux.0 file, your pixielinux.0 file will have two files. One is the VM Linux and another is the initrd. So basically your VM Linux is your kernel and your initrd is the initial RAM disk that you require. So these are the only two things that you require for booting up a machine. Okay, so this is how Pixie works. So how this is related to Foreman discovery, we will just see a short demo which can relate. So yeah, so this is the Foreman UI, how it looks. And we clicked on the Foreman discovery. Now you can see that there are no hosts discovered here. Since we don't have real metal machines, what I've done is I'm spinning up a machine on libvirt with Pixie-based provisioning. What I do is I select all these, I get the machine in a network, in the Foreman network, and once the machine comes in the Foreman network, I basically boot it. Once I start booting the machine, and you just need to press OK. Once you start booting the machine, you will see there is a DHCP request being made over here. Once the DHCP request is made, the DHCP returns a file name called pixielinux.0. It gives us the next server's address, and it gives IP and gateway, as we had seen already. Once we get that, we get the pixielinux.0 file, we go to the TFTP server. Now TFTP server will contain all the file names, like the operating system names. We select discovered host as a ISO. So now, once you select the ISO that you need, it will give you VM Linux and initrd, and the system boots. After the system boots, you will get a successful discovered host. And if you refresh this page again, on the Foreman discovery page, you will get a discovered host here. So like this, you can have 500 hosts, and then you can basically, with the help of Foreman, you can provision whichever operating system you want. So that's it from my side. If you have any questions about Foreman discovery, Foreman, or you want to talk about Keycloak, you can get in touch with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul. So next talk is on data at rest encryption by Mridul Verma.
Hello. Okay, yeah.
sorry, there were some issues. So yes, I'm going to talk about data at rest encryption. So when I mean data at rest encryption, I mean data setting on your HDDs or SSDs encryption. So yes, let's start. So let's answer the most basic question: why do we even need this encryption? So, any guesses? So yes. So one of the most prominent reasons for having this encryption is yes, there might be a breach in the data centers, or there might be some exploits in, there might be some vulnerabilities in the contained VM or any other containers which might be sitting on the same system, and they might have the access to the underlying storage, and in that way they can get hold of your data, and if that's not encrypted, then it might be an issue to you and to your customers. So yes, so that's why we need encrypted hard drives and encrypted SSDs. So what can we do to just remediate this? So let's talk about that. So like kernel provides various mechanisms to just handle this. Like there are file system level encryptions, block level encryptions, and hardware level encryptions. So we can all use these encryption techniques to just have a go at it. So yes, before going to details, so let's try to understand how does the read request work. So when a read request comes to a system, so first of all, the application raises a read request to the file system, and this file system issues a block read request to the block layer. And this block layer sends a sector read request to the device itself. So as we can see in this example, that there are particularly 3 layers in which the handshake between one layer to the another layer happens. So these are the places exactly where we can have encryptions. So in the first case, that's where the file system encryption works. And the second case, it's where the block layer encryption works. And third place is where the disk level encryption works. So yes, so let's have a look at this example. So as we can see, the file system, as it just at the top of the chain, the application issues a request to that, and then it issues a request to block layer, and then to the block devices. And as we can see, like in the first example, the block layer encryption happens at the block layer, at this layer, and the file system encryption happens at that. So now the data which gets transferred between the file system to the block layer is not encrypted. In this case, in the block layer encryption case, and but in case of that file system to block layer, the data between the file system and the block layer is encrypted. So essentially, what it means is when we have file system level encryption, so the metadata which is associated with the files, like the file name, the file properties, the file security policies, and all of that, is not encrypted. And if there is a vulnerability, then the attacker could see those metadata associated with the files. But in case of block layer, the attacker cannot see those things because everything on the disk is stored in the form of blocks. And this metadata is also in some way some data as blocks, so it's also encrypted. So there are advantages of block layer encryption, as we can particularly see in this example. So yes, so let's answer the most last question, that how can we achieve this disk encryption? So Linux kernel provides some eCryptFS, like it's a file system encryption which we can use to encrypt at the file system level, and the second utility is the dmcrypt utility, which we can use along with looks, which is the password manager, which will make sure that we encrypt the blocks which are stored onto the disks. So these are the ways in which we can have encryptions. So yes, thanks.
Thank you, Mridul. So next talk is on rebooting PyLadies Bangalore 2.0 by Pooja Gedige.
Hello? Okay. Where? This one. be. Cool. I'm Pooja, and I co-organize Pi Ladies Bengaluru with a wonderful team of women volunteers, and I'm very proud to represent Pi Ladies Bangalore here. We are Pi Ladies, a close-knit of community of women programmers, designers, thinkers, makers, breakers, and everyone who are interested in the Python programming language, in programming, and about computer systems and computational art. So we are a rebooted community. We are 2.0, which has taken off in November 2018. And since then, we have been conducting Pi Ladies events across the city in Bangalore, which includes talks, technical talks, which also includes games and little informal kind of community involvement, workshops. We finished having Python 101 workshop and data science workshop, and also we are always looking out for women speakers who can come on the stage and share their knowledge with all the other women in tech community in this city. So this is the journey. So far, we have had a wonderful journey in the pictures that you can see on my left. So we are looking for volunteers, we are looking for speaker mentors, we are looking for speakers, we are looking for you all, we are looking for your friends who are women, and we are looking for everyone out there who could come down, join us, have some fun with Pi Ladies, talk about your knowledge, talk about your experiences and stories. Call for proposals form is always open at Pi Ladies Bangalore. You do not have to be an experienced speaker. We encourage newbie speakers to come forward and share their experiences because we have speaker mentor. If you are a newbie speaker, if you know someone who has done an amazing project, please encourage them to speak at Pi Ladies events. And also, if you want to volunteer with us, be a speaker mentor, this is our link to the call for proposals form. Please note it down and share it with your friends and families. Building communities take time. So we are looking for volunteers who could also contribute 5 minutes of their time to us by building a website. We do have a website coming up. We will be releasing it soon. So do reach out to me or do reach out to us on Twitter and by email. So we are very happy to welcome you on board. So the bigger goal is we are planning for Pi Ladies India, and also we are planning to have more women speakers at PyCon India, which will be organized in October, in November this year. So the proposals for PyCon India will be closing by July 1st. So do come down, do talk to me if you need more details. How you can give back to the community, be a speaker mentor, come help us out with the logistics of the events, spread the word among your colleagues, friends, and family. We have a website, so come work on the website. We would love some additional hands. And we do have creatives. So we need creatives, we need designers for every event who could design logos for us, who could design posters for the events. We want people to maintain our social media pages. And also we want your input of code of conduct so that we can have a very customized code of conduct in our events. And share Pi Ladies love. Thank you.
Thank you, Pooja. So the last talk is by Vandana on security communities in Bangalore.
Thank you so much, Pooja, for setting up the stage. I'm not good with slides, so I don't have slides. It's just an information for you. A lot of you might not be from the security background, and you might want to be part of security because there are a lot of talks today. You have seen that they are from security. Even though you're part of development team, operations team, we talk about DevOps, DevSecOps, many things. Everywhere security is coming in. But where should you start from? You have no idea where to start off. When I started off, I had no idea that some communities exist. Thanks for Poojas for setting the stage that at least you got to know that there are certain communities which lie. So in security also, we have some communities like OWASP, which is Open Web Application Security Project, which talks about different projects, different chapters. So we have a chapter in Bangalore as well, where we monthly meet and talk about security, anything and everything in security. The same way we have a null community, wherein we do the combined meetups with OWASP, and there are certain workshops which are provided. All are free of cost, and this is for all of us. I was a volunteer and then became a chapter leader, but any of you who is interested in knowing more about security, please do join those communities or attend those sessions and contribute. That's more important, because you know more about development technologies. Some we might not be knowing, so we would like to hear from you. What's your take on? If we are working on something and we are saying that this might be going this way, but you say no, this can go this way also. So your inputs are very much welcome. Another thing is that there are a lot of ladies who reach out to me saying that we are not very comfortable in a bigger platform. Is there any other platform that exists for just women? Yes, we do have InfoSec Girls and OWASP Women in AppSec, wherein we just try and mentor the ladies through workshops, through sessions. We do online sessions to make them comfortable, but it's not a secluded community, just to make sure that they are becoming a part of the bigger community. So if you want any information, please reach out to us. You can follow InfoSec Girls, OWASP Women in AppSec, OWASP, or Null. All are present in Bangalore, so feel free to reach out to us. Apart from that, there are a lot of people from other parts of the country, so you can look for the chapters there. OWASP and Null chapters exist almost every part of the country, even the most farthest one. So please feel free to search, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to me at Twitter, InfoSec Vandana. Thank you.
Thank you, Vandana. So the next talk is on securing infrastructure with OpenSCAP, the automation way, by Jaskar and Narula from Red Hat.
Hello. Okay. Hello everyone. Good evening. So my name is Jaskaran and I am one of satellite engineer at Red Hat. Today my topic is securing infrastructure with OpenSCAP, the automation way, because it's an era of automation, right? We are far behind with manual tasks and doing all those things. So automation in terms of working with so sorry. Okay. Right. So let's start this. My major agenda is to cover what's OpenSCAP, why do we need it, right? Components, something around it, and integration with Foreman. A lot of you might have heard about Foreman in just last 15 minutes. So I'll give a more idea on that and how it actually works. So in between the talk, I'll have a demo as well. The first question comes to my mind is, of whosoever listens to this, is what is OpenSCAP, right? It's an open source security scanning tool which is used for two primary purposes, that is to mitigate software vulnerabilities, to check configurational flaws, to check security flaws, right? So these are the two things that the OpenSCAP directly focuses on. Whatever software we have in our infrastructure, we have to figure out what flaws are in it, or configurational things that normal day-to-day sysadmins or someone who manages the infrastructure make mistakes. Why do we need OpenScap? It's a way to express security policies in a user interactive format. A lot of people come across and says, there is a vulnerability in a system, but I don't know what it is. What is Meltdown? What is Spectre? A lot of vulnerabilities are out there, but I don't know what to do with it. It's in my infrastructure, right? OpenScap gives you a clear idea what a vulnerability is all about. What to do about it, how to mitigate all those things. OpenScap, generally known as, is an NIST standard, certified standard, contains a lot of security policies. So take that word, security policies. I'll be explaining more about security policies in my later slide. A tool to verify system or infrastructure to make up a certain standards. Now standard comes to my mind. There are a lot of organizations which tends to have a set of standards in their organization. Let's say, talking about XYZ organization, whenever they give a laptop to a new employee, they want a particular set of operating system to be installed and not any other operating system, right? That's a standard for them. Or for our organization, SSH access to certain systems is disabled. That's a standard, that's a security standard, that's required, right? To maintain those standards, make it more easy for the people who work over there, because just maintaining up the standards is not your work. There's something else you need to do, right? You have your own time to work on different things, not just to maintain up the standards. So OpenScap helps you on that front. From the time the system is being provisioned, or it's into your organization, it's into your infrastructure, OpenScap takes control of that. Modification can be done using tailoring files. Obviously, it's an open source. You can do all your modifications that you want to do. Whatsoever you want to do it, you can do it. And you can make it across all of your infrastructure. It's supported cross-platform, may it be Windows, may it be Linux. Anything you want to do it, whatever your infrastructure consists of, OpenScap supports that. So that's a good point where, a lot of organizations say, okay, this particular open source tool is something for Linux, we can't use it. No, it's for Windows as well. All the standards, all the security profiles, all those things are for Windows as well. There are a couple of tools which OpenScap gives you. First one is Anaconda. A lot of people have heard about Anaconda. That's an installer for a Linux, right? Linux-based system, that's an installer. So in Anaconda, there is a plugin for OpenScap. The time you are building up a system, let's say you are building your own desktop system, one system, Anaconda is out there. Or if you are building a number of systems, yes, you can have your own set of Anaconda file where you can mention out those profiles. You can mention out those rules that you need to check, mention out those standards which you want to, put it in the system that you are building up. Scap Workbench. This is an GUI tool which Scap gives you. So, people not comfortable with command line, you can use this tool. It's an absolutely brilliant tool because it gives the user an approach for, tailoring out things. Modification can be done even if the person is not core technical or he or she doesn't know that if I, omit out this particular rule or omit out this particular standard, what impact it will create, right? What at the background the system is going to happen. Even if it doesn't know, OpenScap will take care of that. The workbench takes care of that. OpenScap Daemon, again, the service will be running up in your systems, in your containers, in your infrastructure at the background. And at the time when it feels or you want to configure according to it, every Monday at 6 p.m., the scan needs to be run up. That's one thing. Or at a regular intervals, it needs to be run up. It's again taken care of. A lot of people has this idea that whatever scan we did in last 6 months, it should be stored just for verification, just for analyzing how we are moving towards security, right? In that case, Scap Taxonomy is a very useful tool for you. You can use your SQL search query and you can get whatever things, whatever scanned reports of just one system, or the scanned reports of your entire systems or entire infrastructure will be out there, and you can search what all things I can do with that. OpenSCAP base, it's just a command line tool which I'll be showing you up. OpenSCAP components, okay, so languages is something which, OpenSCAP is written in XML. So if you want to write up a rule, you have to know what is XML. XCCDF is a sort of language where it's a kind of a wrapper over OVAL rule. So you write a rule in OVAL, and over that, there is a wrapper. A lot of people who are from programming background, you must be knowing it. What is a wrapper of, in a programming? So XCCDF is a wrapper, and with the help of these two things, XCCDF and OVAL, it creates a data stream file, which is the file which OpenSCAP used to scan your systems. That's again a rule list. Let's say in OVAL, you have a lot of rules written in it. I need SSH access to be disabled. It should be installed on your system. A lot of other things you mention in the form of rules, or it's in the upstream. That has been again collaborated with XCCDF, and you get a data stream file. That particular file is used for scanning up your system. ARF report. This is a sort of a report, a format of a report in which the OpenSCAP gives you the result. The first result comes up. Also, you can have your results in HTML format, in a beautiful format. You can open up in your browsers and you can give it to people who just want to know what all things or how many systems are being scanned up, or if a system is scanned, to what level of it is vulnerable. OpenSCAP components, CVSS, all these things, OpenSCAP looks from NIST. So whatever NIST had its own standard indexing of each and every vulnerability, OpenSCAP copies that and has those as it indexed. It's all about OpenSCAP, but how does it work? Okay, it's a beautiful diagram out here, and which says there are few profiles which I have written over here. PCI DSS profile. It's a profile which has been used by payment gateways. A lot of companies which are using payment gateways, the particular profile has been used by them. Standard Docker. If you are using Docker in your infrastructure, you can use this profile. Standard system profile. That's normal system profile. Maybe you are using CentOS, Ubuntu, Debian, maybe Red Hat, Fedora, something, anything, right? Or maybe Microsoft, Windows, right? That's a standard system profile in which all the rules have been mentioned based on your infrastructure, right? These collaborative profiles are known as SCAP profiles, and it's distributed among the operating system, whatever operating system you use. Collection of these profiles is known as SCAP content. That's all content. Now, the SCAP content can be directly applied to your client systems with the help of OpenSCAP. That's one thing. But now, this particular project is an open source project. It should have an ability to communicate or to get integrated with other open source projects as well. So here, Foreman comes into the picture. So that diagram with a helmet is Foreman. So with the help of Foreman, you can either use Puppet, whatever Puppet you want to use Puppet Enterprise, right? Or you want to go with Ansible, you want to go with Chef, Salt, anything can be used with Foreman, and you can then apply it on your client systems. Sorted. If it's, you are using Foreman in your infrastructure, by Foreman. Nothing in your infrastructure, just direct systems, do it with OpenSCAP. I was talking about profiles. So this is just an image which gives you an idea that what all sort of profiles I was talking about. That is health insurance portability, maybe something related to hospitals. PCID I've already talked about. Red Hat corporate profile. Again, this is a company-specific profile, right? If you have a systems on that. C2S for Red Hat, cloud-based instances. A lot of other profiles which we can scroll down and we can have those profiles mentioned over there. There's also an option of tailoring files. Let's say based on these profiles, C2S profile for Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 is a very strict for your infrastructure. Let's move out some, cross out some rules, and that particular file, you have to generate a new file, and that particular file can be is known as tailoring file. So based on one standard profile, you have your own custom tailoring profile which have an addition of rules or some rules which you have striked off. So this is a report of how OpenScap report comes up. So there is an evaluation target. I have mitigated it. I mean, it will give you or host by system. When the scan happened, when it got finished, by which user, even if you are using AD or LDAP or something, it will give you the user which user scanned this result. How many rules got passed, which were failed, and which were not even checked, right? Checked as in, you want a particular rule not to be checked in your system because that is something your organization wants. So you can skip that rule. This is the rules which you have in your system, whichever are failed, whichever are passed, somewhere are not checked. The beautiful thing is you can just click on that rule and it will give you the description about it, what that particular rule was, and what all things you need to do about it to mitigate that particular thing or to pass that result, right? With OpenScap, you get also a flexibility to do all the stuff with Bash, with Ansible playbook, or with Puppet modules. So this is how you just click on Ansible scriptlet and it gives you the Ansible playbook. But this is for each and every rule which got failed. But you want to mitigate all the rules. You just have to click a command. Okay, I'll give you the command now. And the Ansible playbook will be generated for all those rules which are failed. Okay. So this is the command. And it will generate the Ansible playbook. We have the Ansible playbook over here. Simple. How does it looks like? I'll give you that also. How that my Ansible playbook looks like. Something like this. It got generated with this particular command. It was for this system. All the inventories and everything are out here for all those rules which were failed. Right. Now, this is the command that I have used. Now, OpenScap get also integrated with a lot of other enterprise products or open source products as well. So let's say you want to use on a very small infrastructure, you can use Daemon or Workbench because it's easy to manage. Or if you want to use on a large systems, you can definitely use Foreman, SUSE Manager, Red Hat Cloud Forms, Satellite 5, Satellite 6, anything you want to use. You can integrate with, let's say, I'm giving an example with Foreman because it's open source, right? What Foreman does is it gives you a platform to manage your infrastructure. Let's say you have VMs, you have containers, what all things you have in your infrastructure. It gives you all the help to manage out your infrastructure. It gives you, it has three major features. That is provisioning up a system, configuration, monitoring, because once you provision it, you need some sort of configuration on in your infrastructure. And then once everything is set up, monitoring is done. So Foreman is quite integratable with a lot of other components, EC2, Google Cloud, Overt, OpenStack. What all things you want to use, you can use it, and you can manage all your systems which are deployed over there. You can manage over here as well. Provisioning, you can provision, once you set up Foreman, you can provision any system on any sort of platform which you have. You have platform, you are using DigitalOcean, maybe Overt, VMware, Docker, anything, any platform you're using. It's very easily integratable, and you can deploy all the systems on the platform that you are using. Configuration, majorly it's Puppet and Ansible. Previously it was using with Puppet, and now it's been using Ansible. But let's say you don't want to use this, you want to go with something else. Chef, Salt, anything else can be used. Right, I guess I'm, okay. Monitoring, this is one thing which needs to be done. There are a lot of APIs which are well documented. The documentation is fabulous and gives you proper API monitoring, gives you the OpenScap report generation. You can generate that report and you can get it on a web UI. A single dashboard, you can get all the reports of entire infrastructure. Now, you have a lot of systems and you don't know which particular system lies in which organization or which place, which data center. You can directly search it through SQL query or directly with hostname. And it works across the application in whatever page you are, it will search it and it will give it to you. This is how something your OpenSCAP database, Foreman dashboard looks like. It gives you what all things, like the overview, what all systems are being scanned, what all systems are synced, updated. All the things will be in the dashboard. And this particular image is of a system which has been provisioned with the help of Foreman. So all the IPs, all the system facts will be out there for each and every system. Whatever configuration you want to do, it will be out there. Even before deploying the system, once it's deployed and comes to your hand, you can do other configuration things. Let's say, provision the system, make this sort of configuration, and once this configuration is done, once the system is built, scan with this OpenSCAP. Everything is sorted. You have all the automation done at your end, and it's good to go. Anyways, okay, so. All right, so like every other product, OpenSCAP also has a limitation. If you want to make a new rule, lot of people comes to say, and we have our own auditing system, we have our own auditors, which they have their own scripts, and they come and they check our organization and they audit the organization. So what if we want to write our own rules? I would say it's not that easy to write your own rules. You just need to know XML, and then a proper wrapper should be out there, and you can build your own rule. But yeah, by default, whatever rules are out there, you have to use that. Only takes vulnerability in vendors package, not in EPL as of now. There are future plans of OpenSCAP to have EPL into place, but I'm not pretty sure how far it's been going on. Not in third-party vendors, like software that you develop. Let's say you develop for some RPM or some other software package you develop. OpenSCAP won't be able to help on that front, right? Detects only vulnerability important enough to fix RSAs. So it's more of company-driven, where your security advisories are being concerned. Security policies don't get updated automatically under Foreman. So in whichever open source or enterprise level project you integrate OpenSCAP, it has a drawback that the profile that I was talking about in the diagram, the Docker profile, the standard profile, doesn't get updated automatically. We need to have some sort of automation done at that end, so that from repository, those profiles get updated, and once those are updated, again, things will be sorted at your end, right? So it was all in a nutshell that how an open source tool is easy to use at your end, right? Just for 1-2 systems or for your entire infrastructure, whether it's it is on any of the platforms. So I guess that is all. I'm running out of my time, I guess. So it's fine. It's good. Okay. Any questions anyone have around this, around Foreman, around OpenSCAP? Anything you can guys, you can shoot me out.
Prerna.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Prerna. So basically, I have a question regarding this OpenSCAP. So there is an infrastructure tool Nessus.
Right.
Yeah. So what's the difference between these two? I mean, so OpenSCAP is just for only, like you mentioned, NIST-based framework as well as PCI DSS. So for those policies,
right,
it will scan for a whole infrastructure also, like Nessus scans we use.
Yes, Nessus scans will be. You can integrate OpenSCAP profiles in your Nessus scan. Let's say you have already paid for it. It's a paid product, I believe, right? You have already paid for it. So you can you can pull out those profiles which OpenSCAP gives you, and you can integrate it within your Nessus tool.
Okay.
Right. So you do not have to again redeploy OpenSCAP, but it's just like it's an add-on security which gives you advantage of covering a larger database of security policies.
Okay. So it's specific to the standards like PCI DSS and NIST-based frameworks. It's specific to that only, or it will scan for a whole infrastructure also?
It will scan the entire infrastructure. So it will scan the networking part, whatever networking part you have in your infrastructure, and as well as the standardizations that you want to maintain. Okay. Right. So anytime you can tailor out those things in the rule list. So I can show you the rule, how rules are being done. So these are the rules that we have, and anytime you want to customize it, you can directly go and you can just you can click it, or let's say I want to have this rule. Just click it and make a customization file. There's a tailoring file you have. And now you can integrate it with your Nessus tool, or if you want to use it with OpenScap, you can use it directly with OpenScap.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Okay.
Hi, Nemo here.
Yeah.
I had a question around the Red Hat side of things. So since you mentioned it only supports RHSAs,
Right.
and the policies that you're showing also are very RPM specific.
Right.
How well does it work with non-Red Hat distributions?
It works with non-Red Hat distributions absolutely fine. It works with Ubuntu, because, okay, I'll show you the Ubuntu part. So as of now, I can load any sort of operating system you have, and these are the profiles which will be in your system, and you can use anything. It can be Debian, it can be Ubuntu, it can be even Windows. I don't have a Windows right now, but it can be anything. So it doesn't restrict you to Red Hat. Red Hat it's a part, but you can go around with any of the other operating systems. Yeah.
Yeah, I have two questions. First one is, what are the reason that they chose XML as a formatting thing? And secondly, how hard is it to write some JSON or YAML, formatter that OpenScap can take as input?
I would say this is all, I'm not pretty sure why they have chosen XML as a part. They could have chosen other languages to work, but I'm not pretty sure on this front. And since I'm not a maintainer, I'm not the correct person for that. But in terms of the next part was YAML, right? So it all depends on the person who is using it. So for me, if I'm using OpenScap, for me it's not very difficult to write an XML or a YAML, right? But for the person, let's say, who is on a position as known as manager, he just want to know what all things are there, but he still wants to have a tech background, or you want to still touch base on, you still have to check what all things are going on in this system. This particular tool gives you proper insight, which host, which rule, why, how to mitigate it, and it also gives you the flexibility with Ansible, if he knows or he or she knows it, Ansible, Puppet, or anything, he can mitigate it, the description about it. So all the things are done for the person who is not even very good in terms of technicalities, but yes, he still want to go ahead with it. Yeah.
Does it has the capability to scan Docker images?
Yes, it has. There is an atomic scan which can be run on Dockers. Okay. So I have not shown over here, but yes, OpenScap has the capacity to scan Docker images and containers.
So it has inbuilt profiles for it?
Pardon?
Inbuilt profiles?
Inbuilt profiles? Yes, we have different profiles as well for that.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I have one question on web scanning part.
I can't see. Okay. Yeah.
So as Nessus scanner or OpenVAS, we do have a ability to scan web-based URL as well as system profiles. So if I'm running a OpenVAS, do you recommend to go for this Scap?
It all depends on you and your infrastructure, right? Let's say you are pretty much comfortable with OpenVAS, you can go ahead with that, not a problem. But if you still want to give a try to OpenScap, definitely you should give, because there could be certain changes or different approach towards scanning up your same infrastructure. So I would say definitely give a try, but if you still don't want, again, it's an open source world, you can just walk off. Yeah.
I have actually two questions. One, does it scan the container itself, or it scans the image?
No, it scans the container as well.
Okay. And second one is, how do you make sure that the code that your tool has generated is compatible with the version of Ansible or Puppet or Chef you are using?
The second question, I'm not clear. Can you just repeat it?
So there might be, compatibility metrics in between the configuration management tool and OpenScap.
Okay.
So how you are making sure that they both are compatible?
Right. So behind this, whatever rule, let's say you write today, you have to give Ansible playbook or a Puppet playbook, whatever feasible to you, whatever feasible to the developer or the person who is writing a rule, and give it in the upstream, right? So upstream gets checked which rule or which Ansible playbook runs on which systems. Or I mean, let's say that's one thing for your configurational tool. I mean, OpenScap needs to manage by Ansible 2.7, right? So both, it's again at the end, Ansible playbook will be running up. And the rule, I mean, the task in the Ansible playbook will be the one of your own system, not for Puppet or not for Ansible, core Ansible or core Puppet. The rule, the task will be for the system or the infrastructure that you have, the configuration that you have done. It won't change the Puppet configurations, it won't change the Ansible configurations, but it will change the system configurations. So let's say you have in login.tf, some rule you have written, or in profiles you have mentioned some sort of things, right? Once you log in into Bash, you have some things in your terminal. It won't change that, but it will give you a hint that you know what, you have to. This is something which is deprecated, or this is something which is not secure enough for your infrastructure. So now you can use it with a Bash script or Ansible playbook. So it will change that configuration. So custom scans, I mean custom things, custom configurations will be something which will be a human invention. It needs to take place. But if this is something related to more of a package, OpenScap will take place of that. So I'm not pretty sure whether I have answered your question, but yeah, we can discuss that offline. Anyone else? All right.
Okay, thank you, Jaskaran. So before we head to the evening tea break, I just have an announcement to make. There is a